Chapter 1, Section 1, Societies of North America. Main idea. Ancient peoples came from Asia to the Americas and over time established many diverse Native American societies. Why it matters now. Some Americans today claim one or more of these cultures as part of their heritage. One American story. To do her work, Solveig Turpin must climb rugged cliffs, step over rattlesnakes, and dodge sharp cactus spines. For more than 20 years, she has searched the caves and cliffs of Texas for paintings that ancient people left on rock walls. Turpin is an archaeologist, a scientist who studies the human past by examining the things people left behind. One painting that Turpin found shows a red, 9-foot-long panther. She believes it shows a religious leader who turned himself into an animal. A voice from the past. This is the shaman, religious leader, who transformed into the largest and most powerful animal here. I like to call the shamans supramen because they were over everything. Archaeologists make theories about the past based on what they learn from the bones and artifacts. Artifacts are tools and other objects that humans made. They give clues about who ancient people were and how they lived. This section discusses some theories about early Americans. The first people in America. Scientists believe the first Americans migrated or moved to the Americas from Asia. They disagree, however, about how and when this movement took place. Some ancient people may have crossed a land bridge known as Barinia that joined Asia and North America during the last ice age. The ice age, which lasted for thousands of years, was a period of extreme cold in which glaciers trapped so much water that ocean levels dropped. The scientists who hold this theory believe the earliest Americans arrived 12,000 years ago. Other scientists believe humans came to the Americas much earlier. They have found artifacts in South America that tests show to be 30,000 years old. These scientists believe that people came to the Americas by many routes, including by boat, over thousands of years. The emergence of civilizations. A culture is a way of life that people share, including arts, beliefs, and customs. The first people to live in the Americas thousands of years ago lived in hunting and gathering cultures. They hunted animals and gathered wild seeds, nuts, fruits, and berries. In time, people in different parts of the world began planting seeds. This was the beginning of agriculture. About 5,000 years ago, humans began to domesticate plants and animals. Domestication is the practice of breeding plants or taming animals to meet human needs. People in central Mexico learned to grow corn, which became an important food source. Agriculture spread throughout the Americas. Having a stable food supply changed the way people lived. Once they no longer had to travel to find food, they built permanent villages and focused their energy on many different activities. Slowly, some cultures grew complex and became civilizations. A civilization has 5 features. 1. Cities that are centers of trade. 2. Specialized jobs for different people. 3. Organized forms of government and religion. 4. A system of record keeping. And 5. Advanced tools. 1200 BC, an advanced civilization arose in Mesoamerica, a region that stretches from central Mexico to present-day Nicaragua. For 800 years, a people called the Olmec thrived in this region along the Gulf of Mexico. The Olmec built large cities, set up a network of trade routes, and constructed earthen mounds shaped like pyramids. Around 400 BC, the Olmec mysteriously vanished. By then, their culture had spread along trade routes and influenced others. By AD 250, about 650 years after the Olmec vanished, the Maya had developed a great civilization. Their cities were in southern Mexico and Guatemala, where they built pyramid mounds topped by temples. By 900, the Maya had abandoned many of their cities. Scientists think that revolts, disease, or crop failures may have caused their society to fail. Early Native American civilizations. During the Mayan period, various groups of people built civilizations in the areas that would become the present-day United States. The Hohokam created a flourishing society from about 300 BC to AD 1400 in what is now Arizona. In order to farm the dry land, the Hohokam dug hundreds of miles of canals to irrigate or water their crops. The Hohokam also traded with peoples in neighboring regions. Beginning in about AD 100, the Anasazi lived in the area where Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico now meet. Like the Hohokam, the Anasazi were mainly farmers who traded widely. Around 1300, drought or warfare caused the Anasazi to leave their homes. In the eastern part of what is now the United States lived several groups of people called mound builders. The mound builders were Native Americans who built large earthen structures as burial mounds and temples. Mound builder cultures included the Adena, the Hopewell, and the Mississippians. The Mississippians, who lived from AD 800 to 1700, built some of the first cities in North America. By the 1700s, most of the Mississippians had died from diseases they caught from the Europeans. By 1500, North America was home to hundreds of cultural groups, speaking perhaps 2,000 languages. One reason Native Americans were so diverse was that each group adapted to its own environment, whether sub-zero ice fields, scorching deserts, or dense forests. Environment shaped each group's way of life. In some regions, Native Americans based their economy on farming. In others, they relied on hunting or fishing. Different environments cause technology to vary. Technology is the use of tools and knowledge to meet human needs. In coastal areas, farmers made tools from shells. In deserts, they used irrigation, the bringing of water to land. Environment affected religion too. Native Americans strongly believed that certain places were sacred and that animals, plants, and natural forces had spiritual importance. Peoples of the North and West. The Aleut and the Inuit lived in the frozen lands of the far north. The Aleut lived on islands off Alaska, and the Inuit lived near the coast. Because their climate was too cold for farming, the Inuit and the Aleut were hunters. Farther south, the northwest coast people, such as the Haida and the Kwakiutl, hunted sea mammals and fished for salmon. Living by forests, they used wood for houses, boats, and carved objects. The peoples of the West included tribes in California, the Columbia Plateau, and the Great Basin. Much of the West is not suitable for farming. The people who lived there existed mainly by hunting and gathering. To the south, in what is now the American Southwest, lived the Pueblo people. Their ancestors were the ancient Hohokam and the Anasazi. Like their ancestors, the Pueblo used irrigation to alter their desert region for farming. The Navajo and the Apache were nomadic, or wandering, hunter-gatherers who came to the region later than the Pueblo. Over time, the Navajo adopted farming and other Pueblo practices. Peoples of Mexico. Far to the south, the Aztecs created a great civilization in what is now central Mexico. In 1325, they began to build their capital city, Tenochtitlan, on islands in Lake Texcoco. Two things helped the Aztecs build a strong empire. First, they drained swamps and built an irrigation system. This enabled them to grow plenty of food. Second, they were a warlike people who conquered most of their neighbors. The Aztecs had a complex society. Rulers were the highest class. Priests and government workers ranked next. Slave and servants were at the bottom. The Aztecs had elaborate religious ceremonies linked to their calendar and their study of the sun, moon, and stars. Peoples of the Great Plains and East. The Great Plains of North America is a region of flat grasslands stretching from the Mississippi River west to the Rocky Mountains. The Native Americans that inhabited this land were a diverse group. Some were nomads. Others lived in villages by rivers where land was easier to farm. Many Plains tribes relied on the buffalo for much of their food, clothing, and tools. The Southeast, which stretches from East Texas to the Atlantic Ocean, has mild winters and warm summers with plentiful rainfall. The long growing season allowed the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and other southeastern groups to become farmers. Like the Southeast, the Northeast had plenty of fish, game, and rain. But the climate was colder with snowy winters. Forests covered much of the region, so it is called the Eastern Woodlands. Most of the people living there spoke either an Iroquoian or Algonquian language. The Iroquois adapted the forest for farming by using slash-and-burn agriculture. In slash-and-burn agriculture, farmers chopped down and then burned trees on a plot of land. The ashes from the fire enriched the soil. The Iroquois often raided each other's villages for food and captives. In the late 1500s, 5 northern Iroquois nations took the advice of a peace-seeking man named Daganoweda. They stopped warring with each other and formed an alliance. This alliance of the Cayuga, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, and the Seneca was the Iroquois League. The League brought a long period of peace to the Iroquois. A council of leaders from each nation governed the League. Women played important roles in Iroquois society. They nominated members of the tribal council, and if a leader did something wrong, the women of his clan could vote him out of the office. Across the Atlantic, the peoples of West Africa and Europe were also building impressive civilizations. You will read about these people and cultures in the next section.